Okay, now we're going to do the same thing, but we're going to do it with a 60-degree angle. But I don't have to go through all the work, because we've already established that the short side is how much? 1/2. Okay, on a unit circle, the short side is a half. On a 30, 60, 90 triangle, the short side's a half, and the long side is? Square root of 3/2, okay? Memorize those numbers, okay? It's very important, I think, that you memorize the numbers. So here we go. We've got we'll call this a 60-degree angle. And we'll kind of do the same thing. Again, I won't go through all the math. Oopsie daisy. And we'll drop this straight down like that, okay? So now look what we have. We have short side, we have long side. I guess my 30 was probably a little bit too far off. This is probably closer to 60. Well, anyway, we got a short side. Just memorized. We don't have to go through the process again. We've already done that once. What's the value of the short side? Say it one more time. It's 1/2. So that's a half. So what is this as far as our trig functions are concerned? It's the x, so it's the what? It's the cosine, that's right. So what did I just find? I just found the cosine of what? 60 degrees, which is a half. This is the long side right here. So what's the sine? This is the sine then. It would be what? It would be square root of 3/2. See how nice that is? So you really don't have to do a lot of math in your head. All you have to do is think, okay, is that side the short side, or is it the long side? If it's the short side, it's a half. If it's the long side, it's square root of 3/2. You with me on that? Let's do the tangent of this one. We will write this one out. Okay, let's do the tangent of 60. The tangent of 60 is, now you could use it and say opposite over adjacent, or you could say, how have we been learning it? Y over x or sine over cosine, all right? So if you want to think about y over x or sine over cosine, you can do that. So it's the square root of 3/2 over a half. And let's just do the math. Square root of 3/2 divided by a half means multiplied by the reciprocal, so we multiply by 2. Oh, this comes out nice. Look, that cancels out. What do we have? It's the square root of 3. All right? Now, let's just talk about memorizing the tangent for a second. Do you remember what tangent of 30 was? Right, square root of 3/3. Now, and then the tangent, let's write it right next to each other. The tangent of 60 is just the square root of 3, correct? Look, square root of 3 divided by 3. If I take something and divide it by 3, it's going to be smaller than just that number itself. Agreed? Well, that is if it's bigger than 1, but we won't get into that. So if I take a number like this and divide it by 3, it's going to be smaller than this one. So memorize these numbers as well. Memorize square root of 3/3 and memorize just the square root of 3. How do you know which one goes with what? Well, this is a smaller number. If you stuck that in your calculator, you would get a smaller number than you would get right here. I don't know what they are. I don't have those memorized, but you could see. The tangent of 30 goes with the smaller one. The tangent of 60, right, which is a bigger angle, goes with the bigger one. Does that make any sense? That's how I keep it straight in my head. There may be other tricks or maybe other ways to remember it, but that's how I keep it straight in my head. So when I think tangent of 30, okay, the 30 and the 60, the tangents were the square root of 3 ones, square root of 3/3 or just the square root of 3. You have to have that memorized. All right, I think it's easy to do that. You could always go through this process right here if you wanted to, but do you want to go through that every single time? I wouldn't, okay? I would have these things memorized. Now, like if somebody said, quick, what's the tangent of 30? Boom, I don't just jump out like that. I think, okay, tangent of 30, that's the small one, so the small one is the square root of 3/3. Make sense? If I say the tangent of 60, think, oh, tangent of 60, that's the bigger one, and I'm thinking of the 2, right? I'm thinking of this, and I'm thinking of this right here. And I think, oh, that's the bigger one, so it's square root of 3. It's really not that hard to do, all right? There are a few things you have to memorize, but I think the way I'm having you memorize them, I think are pretty easy. We good with that? Okay, so that's 60. So now, remember what I talked about all the time? If I go in the hallway and tap you on the shoulder and I say, what's the sine of 30 degrees? What are you visualizing when you visualize the sine of 30 degrees? I'm visualizing, watch, we'll do this in a different color. This is what's going through my head, all right, when I think the sine of 30 degrees. I'm thinking, okay, skinny angle, right? Drop down like this. So I'm thinking skinny angle, sine is the y, so what is that? Is that the long or the short? That's the short. The short is always a half. Make sense? But visualize it in your head. Practice that once in a while. You're sitting there doing nothing. Sit there. Okay, just make one up. Sine is 60. Okay, well 60, that's the steep one. The sine is the y. That's the longer side, right? And the longer side is the square root of 3/2. Is that making any sense at all to you? All right. So again, visualize it. Now, can I give it to you right away? If you ask me what the what the cosine of 60 degrees is, can I give it to you right away? Probably not. I'm visualizing. This is what I'm doing. Now, maybe some teachers can just give it to you right away. I can't. All right, sorry, but this is what I visualize. This is in my head right here. I'm thinking, okay, 60 degrees, steep triangle, cosine. That's the short side. Short side's a half. Cosine of 60 is a half, just like that. Make sense? Okay, let's do it with a 45. All right, now we're going to do 45. Oh, I was at red. Let me go back to the black. Okay. Let's go 45. Where do you think? About right there? It's pretty close. And we're going to drop this down. Well, it's not exactly 45. This probably should go down. All right, sorry about this. I'm a little bit. Does that look a little bit better? Okay, and then I'll tell you what, let's just get rid of that. Sorry for the time it's taken here. I should have had this already pre-done. All right, so here we go. Now we're talking 45 degrees. So let's do the same thing we did with 30, 60, 90, but let's do it with 45. We can do a little quicker now since we kind of know what's going on, what we're trying to do here. Remember what we're trying to do? We're trying to find that point, aren't we? Trying to find that. And so if I know the x, that's the cosine. If I know the y, that's the sine. Well, 45 is kind of nice. Remember what the relationship was with that? It's the square root of 2 times the hypotenuse. Let's write it down like this. The hypotenuse is equal to the square root of 2 times what? One of the legs. All right, so let's call this x. Now, we could call this x as well because it's a 45, 45, 90. So what's true about the two legs on a 45, 45, 90? They're congruent to each other, right? But I'm not going to call it x even though they are the same thing. I am going to call it y because it's going on the y-axis. Everybody okay with that? Now look at this. The hypotenuse is the square root of 2 times one of the legs. The hypotenuse is 1 square root of 2 times x. Divide by the square root of 2. So x equals 1 divided by the square root of 2. But we don't leave it like that, do we? How do we? Right, we write it square root of 2 over 2. Again, this is another number that you're going to have memorized. Remember the other day when we were doing these things, you had to look at the chart. Remember I said that? And I said there will be a time when you don't have to look at the chart. You'll be able to do these things yourself, and you'll have these things memorized. Paco, you look confused. What's going on? You sure? All right, because you look like I was doing something wrong. And I've done a couple things wrong today already, so I just want to make sure that I'm good. All right, so these things, this is another one to memorize. Again, now 30 is 60. The short side's what? A half. The long side is square root of 3 over 2. Now, the legs on a 45, 45, 90, they're both the same, which makes it kind of nice. So you don't have to memorize two different numbers. What are they? Square root of 2 over 2, and the y is, or the sine is also square root of 2 over 2. So that's my ordered pair. So I can just look at this and tell what the sine is and what the cosine is, and they happen to be the same exact number. You can try that on your calculator just to test to see if it works. Try the sine of 45, try the cosine of 45. It's going to be the exact same thing. And it should be, shouldn't it? Because look, it's what? It's cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, right? And the sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Well, they're the same two exact numbers, aren't they? Divided by the hypotenuse, which of course is the same. So they will be the same. All right, so the cosine, let's just write it down. The cosine of 45 is the square root of 2 over 2. Memorize it like that. If you have to do this on a homework or something, I want exact answers. I'm not looking for you to put that in a calculator and get a decimal approximation for that number right there. It's like 0.707 something, but I don't want that, okay? I want square root of 2 over 2, exact answers. If I give you a test or a quiz problem and it says find the cosine of 45 and you put it in a calculator, give me a decimal number, even though technically, yeah, that's the answer to the question, I'm going to mark it wrong. Why? Because I want your answers how? Exact, okay? I want them exact. This is an exact number. The number you get on the calculator is going to be what? It's going to be an approximation, okay? Let's keep going. We may have to do a part C to this because we're going to do something else. But this is pretty much what I thought we would finish today anyway. So once we finish this, we're probably pretty good. All right, so the tangent of 45. Let's do the tangent. Now look at this. The tangent is the y over the x. Look how nice this is. It's something over itself. What's the tangent of 45? 1. It's 1. Very good. Okay? Does that make any sense? Actually, I will put a little extra part to this because before we get... Anyway, I'm thinking to myself, okay, what we're going to do. All right, we good with that? All right, let's pause.